Okay, well, welcome back everybody to another podcast for a heart to heart with adoptions from the heart. My name's Amanda Aliberti, and I'm a social worker at the agency. I'm really excited to welcome both Mary and Dominique, who are birth mothers who have placed their child for adoption and have been courageous enough to share their story with us today. So welcome, ladies.
Hi.
For starters, can each of you just give a general introduction, who you are, when you placed, and what your current relationship is like today with the adoptive family and the child you placed for adoption? So I'm gonna have Dominique go first.
Okay. So I experienced my first unplanned pregnancy when I was 17. So had a 3-year-old at the time when I placed when I was 21, my second unplanned pregnancy. And then we started off in a super closed adoption and fully closed adoption, I should say, and then opened up a month later. And so now we're in a pretty open adoption. And so now those kids in 2020 are 7, is the one that I'm parenting, and my birth son will be 4 this month in November. So
That's awesome. So the child you placed is 4 years old and the child you're parenting is 7.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And what type of communication do you have with the family? Do you guys visit? Do you text message, phone calls, send pictures?
Yeah, so we the first year it just looked really different. We were navigating what open adoption would look like for us right now, where me and his mom are really close friends, and so I can see him whenever I want. We are both local to Dallas, and and so right now our updates look like 2 times a year is when I would see him, and that I would get an update twice a year. So on the off months that I'm not seeing him, I would get that. So we still do those. So around this time of year, around his birthday, and then about 6 months from now next year, I'll see him again, and I'll get an update in between that. But right now, I think what we've always gone with is whatever season of life we're in. So anything outside of we are like, hey, we're committed to doing these visits and these updates regardless of what season we're in. So if there's a death or we're struggling with something going on or anything like that where we just need life to be slower, we're always promised each other that, and we can always rediscuss anytime. But anything else is extra. And so I babysit him sometimes. And so I'll babysit him on the 21st of this month for the longest period of time I think I'll ever babysit him so far. And we just hang out whenever we can. We get to meet up and hang out. And it really just feels like a friendship. Like, hey, are you busy today? We should get the kids together. Or, hey, are you busy today? We should grab lunch without the kids. So we just get to hang out. And so we just call each other if something big's going on or anything like that. So we just are friends.
That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you. How about for you, Mary?
Yeah, so I was a first time mom when I was pregnant. I was 38 when I got pregnant, so it was a extremely out of left field kind of life change for me. So I placed my daughter Cora in July of 2017. She lives in Virginia, so we're about like 2.5 hours apart because I live in Delaware. And our relationship has been open from the start. So like I knew when I was going through this process that like I wanted to be completely as involved as like, the parents were comfortable with. I let them know, pretty early on, like I will take whatever you want to give me, however many pictures, visits, letters, I just I want to be as involved as I can, you know, while at the same time respecting their boundaries. So like we've had a really, really solid relationship from the beginning. Um, I didn't have any support going through the entire process, and I was even at the hospital by myself. And they, you know, when it came time for her to come, she was early, and they like sped up the highway. They got here in like 45 minutes. Like, I don't know if they had like a space shuttle or whatever they did, but they got to me ASAP because I needed them. And they were with me, like holding my hand, and they walked in the room and they had this like, I'm about to cry. They had this like beautiful bouquet of flowers, and you know, so they were like the only, besides Amanda, they were the only people in the hospital with me supporting me. So our relationship has been like just really solid just from the beginning. We text all the time, pretty much almost like daily. We do 2 visits a year. We do one at Christmas where they come up, and we go to Longwood Gardens. It's a place here that has like lights and stuff. And then for her birthday in July, they always pay for me to take the train and go down and spend the entire weekend with them and the family. So like, I'm like really, they've been really like wonderful with like being open and having me like be a part of like their whole family. Like, I've met all the grandparents and the cousins and the uncles and the, you know, the mother-in-laws, and like I've met them all. Like they're always so like, it makes me a little nervous because it's like I don't want to disappoint them, because they're like fancy people and I'm not. So and they're always like, I'm always afraid I'm gonna like say something or act a way that's gonna like embarrass them, but they're just like so proud to say like, no, this is our birth mom. Like, she's, you know, so like my relationship with them is probably the most important relationship in my life right now that I have, without a doubt. Like, it's not even close. But I can say that we're kind of in a rough patch right now, and it's making me really sad. They just got a new baby, and I'm like I'm super excited and happy for them, but like, and I knew that that would change our relationship, but like I wasn't completely ready for it. So I'm just kind of dealing with that now. Like, it's not like we're in a bad place, we're just in a different place. Like, the relationship is kind of evolving, and I'm having like a hard time with that. But like, they're wonderful people, and they just like you said, like how you're friends with your people, like I'm friends with my people. Like, we talk about things other than the baby, you know, and they support me in everything that I'm trying to do, you know, as far as like my life, and they want me as an individual to be successful, and they care about me as like a person. So I think that's why it's kind of difficult for me now that the relationship is starting to change, because I really value their support, and it means a lot to me. So I'm sorry, I can't I'm sorry, I can't believe like I'm crying already.
You
Literally,
are
if you cry, I'm gonna cry. Because, like, totally, it just brings me back. Like, when you're talking about like the bouquet of flowers, I'm just like, yes, like the moment that they walk into the room and you have a connection with that family, it's just, you just feel the love, you know, like you are like, I'm loved, this baby's loved. Like, I don't know, bringing me back to that moment. I'm like, I'm gonna cry anytime you cry.
Well, girl, you better get your tissue box ready.
I know, like I need tissues.
I'm the
But
biggest crybaby out of the whole group.
yes, you said so many good things that I feel like are such good things should like just talk about. But one of the things is like, what you're talking about that dynamic changing because of a new baby coming in. And I think that we don't really realize, like, sometimes as birth moms, how big of a change that can be. And then it happens, and it's like there's nothing you can do about it. It's just happening, and you don't really have a say in it because you're not a part of their marriage, but also it's happening to you too. And so what does that like change look like for y'all? Like, what is the change from like, this is how it was, and then this is how it is now, if you want to share?
Well, it's like before, before we used to like I said, text all the time, and I could be like, hey, you feel like video chatting? And she'd be like, yeah, give me like 5 minutes. And, we could just kind of, the communication was more, it was more frequent. And it felt like when we talked, like we were having, like you said, like a real, like kind of girlfriend. This is, my person. Let's connect. Let's spill some tea. How are you, girl? What's going on? That kind of thing. And now with the new baby, like, she just doesn't have kind of like the mental time to like spare anything extra. And like, I feel like such a terrible person, because I'm like, it's not about you, girl. Like, stop, get yourself under control. But because like I am so happy for them, like, because number one, they're just amazing humans, and I want them to have all of the babies and all of the puppies and all of the stars that they want. I want unlimited happiness for these people. And they tried so hard, and then my baby needs a sibling, and she's so proud to be a big sister. Man, you can't tell her nothing, okay? Like, she's always like, don't look at Lola, don't talk to Lola, Lola's sleeping, you're too loud. Like, she's very, on it. On her big sister duty, she's like on it. So, and she's so like gentle with her, and she very much takes her responsibility serious. But it's like, I just, like I said, I wasn't ready for the distance that I feel. Even when we do speak, it I just, you can tell when someone's like distracted and they're not quite with you. Like, when we talk, that's how it is. And totally. I don't want to be a brat, but I feel it. So I haven't been reacting well to it. And I like, they know me so well that they can tell when I'm kind of in my feelings. So, and I think that's making them kind of pull back even more. So we got to get a handle on it, because this is kind of like the weirdest we've ever been in our relationship, because when I tell you, we have been solid since day one. So yeah. And but I know part of it is my own fault, like, because I don't have a good support system in my own life. So like, I put a lot of kind of weight on them. That's not their fault. You know what I mean? Like, I just held tight to them because I don't have many people. And so like, notice when someone is starting to back away. So, and that's not their fault, but.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I think like, it's like both. It's like, it's not about you, and then it is about you, because it's like, the reality is that your grief is like tied to them in a way that like, usually grief isn't usually like, it's tied to the person that you're grieving. But to like involve these other people, you're grieving somebody who's alive, and they're that person's caretakers. And so it's like, a part of it is like, it is about you, but then again, it's not. So it's just such a hard, like, I remember my birth son's parents are not, they're trying to have a baby right now. And they have been for a few years. But when I first found out, I was like, jealous and pissed. And when they started thinking about, they started talking to a woman who they potentially were going to adopt her baby. So they're not with an agency or anything, but people reach out to them sometimes. Like a couple of women have reached out to them, and they're always willing to just do whatever that woman needs. You know, if we can help you parent, we want to help you parent. If we can help you, if you want a place, we'd love to potentially be an option for that if we've exhausted all of our efforts for you to parent. But just I'm just like, there's going to be another birth mom, like all of these things come up, and I'm like, is she going to be better than me? Is she going to not? Like, but yeah, it's just like being a mom of one, you have so much more time than being a mom of two. And so whether they have biological children or they add through adoption, it's just like there's more people involved. And so less time naturally is going to be given to everybody in their lives. But it can feel so personal. Like, it's just like, this is like where we were. Like, you're my people. Like, why are you not? And so
I'm like overwhelmed that you can see me, like that you see that, because like I feel, like I said, I feel like a terrible person for even like feeling this way, but like thank you for like seeing it, because it hurts.
Yeah, it totally hurts, and it's not, I'm trying not to cry for you because I know that that's so hard, and it's like, and that's why I like encourage adoptive families and birth families to just like, it's so sweet because you're tied, and it's so easy when you have really great people, both bio families and adoptive families, that get in this relationship. You naturally fall in love with each other. Like, you're bonded by this beautiful child that is such a gift to both of you. And so it's like, to not become each other's person is really hard. Like, especially when you guys just get along and you can find this common interest in the child. And so it just gets really hard to navigate when that happens. And I think I lean in towards like, she's my person, but she's always communicated like, hey, I cannot be your person. So just like, remember that, like, I need you to have your own support. But if that like, but even in that, it's still hurtful because I'm like, but it's just so natural. Like, if I met you outside of adoption, we would be friends. Like, you would be my mentor, you know? So it's just so hard to like separate the two. And it feels really personal, especially for me with the adoptive mom. Like, the adoptive father, I'm like, yeah, he's so great, but he's also a man. Like, we don't have this. Yeah. I'm not like texting him if my boyfriend breaks up with me or something. Exactly. So, you know, so he's really great, and we have a really great relationship, but he's also a man that is somebody else's husband. So it's so different. But that mom just becomes, you're both that baby's mom. It's just so hard to explain, but you just like, it's so easy to feel jealous and to feel like lonely and to feel like you're just losing like your best friend, you know, which is just as hard as a breakup, you know, like if somebody were to say they love you and this is what your relationships look like for this amount of time, and then that starts to change toward going backwards, it's like, it just hurts. So I totally get that. And you're not a bad person at all. Like, it's totally valid to feel all of those things, and it's normal. It's not crazy. And we have to like normalize those things for bio families, because it's so easy for us to lean one of two ways. Us to be like, I don't want to get hurt, so I'm going to exit and I'm going to start ignoring them because this pain is too much, or I'm going to, you know, act out towards them, and then it's going to make them feel like they're going to exit. And so just being able to communicate that, have those relationships where we can breed vulnerability and honesty, and the relationship can be a safe place to be like, hey, to be honest, I can tell you're distracted, and because you have a new baby, and that's so normal and valid, but for whatever reason, it feels really crazy to me. And I didn't choose to feel this way, but I feel jealous, or I feel like I'm losing you. And so then that places the space for them to be like, you're not losing us. And to hear that, it's like, yeah, you're right. I know. Sometimes you just need to like hear people say like, I love you, I'm for you, like nothing has changed. Even though our time together looks different. So you're just not crazy, girl. You're not crazy.
Like, I mean, I've been, because like I said, in the past, we've had like little things where, you know, it seemed that the relationship was kind of hitting a weird patch, but we've always like been able to kind of like talk through it and work through it, because that's one thing that we've been really good with from the beginning, is just like having like uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Important.
But like for whatever reason, this time, I think it's more me. It's not, I know it's more me, where I know that my like emotionally, I'm like really, part of it is a little bit irrational, and that I'm taking it a little bit, like you said, personally, like, you know, they don't love me anymore. Well, I know that's like not true, but like, because of like past kind of heartbreak and damage that I've lived through, that's like your first thought. Well, everyone leaves, or everyone, you know, eventually gets tired of me and they dip or whatever.
Yeah.
So I've been considering, and now like having this talk with you, now I'm gonna write them a letter, because I do so much better when I write it, and I just want them to just be like, so that they can hear me say like, I miss y'all. You know what I mean? Like, I miss what we had. But it was also, I got to acknowledge that it was unfair for me to put so much pressure, or like so much weight on them kind of building me up. Like, that's not their job. Like your person told you like, well, you know, we have to have boundaries. I can't be your person. You have to have like some love outside of this relationship. And that's my fault. I don't, you know, so they shouldn't have to kind of bear the brunt of the, you know, the failures in my life. And like, you, I don't know, you just made me just, I don't know, it was like you, the way you just described that,
Like just, a light bulb going
off.
on.
It made me like see, like, I'm being kind of unfair by just putting that kind of so much weight on it, and it, you know what I mean, and taking it personally. So I think,
and it's okay that you're gonna get that wrong, right? Like, they're gonna get it wrong sometimes, and you're gonna get it wrong sometimes. Yeah. And we just have to normalize, like, hey, I'm not gonna be perfect, but I'll admit when I'm wrong. Yeah. And that they have probably some part to own in that they could probably own too, of like, hey, yeah, when you started acting out like that, we kind of pulled back instead of leaning into that and asking questions, which would have been a better response. Because when we lash out, especially women like us, who, I don't know your story, but just basically based off of what you were just saying, like, we've never really experienced that unconditional love fully from other relationships, and that people, that our relationships with them and receiving love from them is dependent on how they feel or our responses to them. Regardless if I'm wrong or not, is just, it just creates this insecurity in us, which causes us to do those one of two things, like start acting out with, because we're really just like, we can act out in this desire to just like, in an unhealthy way, attempt to communicate. That's our way of communicating. Like, I'm not getting what I need from you anymore. And then the other side of that is just like being like exiting and being like, I'm out, peace. Like, nope, not doing it, cutting you off, ghosting you, not talking about it. And then the adoptive family is like, what just happened? You know? And it's always just like, hey, simple conflict resolution. Yeah. It's like, it can be so easy, and it builds trust, because I bet you'll go to them, and I don't know them, but I hear that they're awesome from you. And so it's like, you'll probably go to them and they'll be like, we love you. What are you talking about? Like, girl, I'm just like tired. Okay. Like, that is it. Okay. I'm just so exhausted. I'm so tired. And I miss you so much that it's probably, you know, like even being a mom, like to a new baby, you're just like, some part of you sometimes, like on a bad day, can feel resentful towards that baby of like, oh, I really want to talk to Mary, but I have you know? And so it's like, yeah, you know, it's like, that's what she's used to too. So she's like losing too, while you're both also gaining, you know?
And it's also just like weird because of the COVID thing. Like we haven't physically, you know, because originally we were seeing each other twice a year, and then it was crazy. This year was going to be the first year we were going to add a third visit. We were going to add a third visit around Mother's Day. We were going to meet in the middle in Baltimore. And but you know, everything with COVID happened, so like I haven't, all of our visits got canceled, so it'll be almost a year since I've actually physically seen them. And I don't even know if they're even going to be able to like come up for Christmas. So like this is the longest we've been physically apart since I've had her.
Which adds to that, I'm sure.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, I look so forward to those visits, and it's not just to see my daughter, it's just to be around them.
Yes.
Because
yes.
they just bring so much good love and light and energy. You know, I feel like a good person when I'm with them. And
totally.
Like I miss that. You know, I miss how I feel when I'm with them.
Yep.
Dominique, there was a clip in one of the videos I saw of you. I forget which one it was called. I was sent numerous videos that you were in.
Yeah.
And the moment when you were in the hospital bed and you said that, I forget your exact words, but when the adoptive mom walked in the room, she just made you light up.
Yeah.
And I connected that with what Mary just said, which is why I found the two of you to be so similar, because that feeling you get when that person is around, it's not just about adoption or this baby, but it's about what that family brings to you and your just your vibe and your personality and how you feel that day. And that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's like that family, just because you in adoption, like it's this, when you get really awesome adoptive families and you know that they're like authentic and honest and just like real, you can just feel it. Like it's just not fake, you know? And just to feel them, get through some of your own insecurities around adoption as an adoptive family and some of your own hang-ups and things, and they're still not perfect in that, but you could tell that they've worked through a lot of that before we met. And you can't love a baby without loving where they come from. And so as much as they love him, they love me, and you could just feel that, you know? And it's just so, it just like I was saying, like on my worst days, like I needed to see her. Like I was like, you give me hope, like providing, like bringing a child, like on the days where I don't want to do this anymore and I want to give up, like looking at you and seeing you and knowing that there's like this little hope of heaven at the end of this tunnel, and there's just like this bright light, you know, in this really dark space. I'm just like, I'm gonna like try to run towards that, you know? And so it can feel like when our worlds are pretty dark as bio families, they're like that light, and we just want to like go, we just want it to not be dark for a little while, you know? We're just like, y'all are that space for us sometimes. And it's really sweet and awesome, but it just like also is just really hard. So it's like people think open is going to solve all of our problems, and it's like it's not, because it's like relational. So it's just like relationships are hard. So no matter how open you get, it's just, you just grow to love that person more, which leaves more space to get hurt ultimately. But
speaking of dark places, I'm kind of backtracking for a second, but can each of you talk a little bit about how you felt when you were facing your unplanned pregnancy? Because I think that oftentimes that discussion like goes out the door and people have assumptions of how women should feel when they find out they're pregnant and the pressures associated with what we should do. So I'm curious if you can kind of touch on that, of how you each felt when you found out you were pregnant.
Go ahead, Mary.
Well, so yeah, like I said, I was 38 when I found out I was pregnant, and like initially I didn't even know I was pregnant, and then like because I had like a really kind of it's a catastrophic car accident in 2008 where like my spine was crushed, and like so like I couldn't walk for like 9 months, and like I had to go through like a lot of rehab and things like that, and so like I have like permanent injuries from that, and so like that in itself, combined with the fact that I was like up there in age, was like, I was told I, couldn't have a baby. And having a baby was like never not on my radar ever. Like I knew very early on that like being a mom just wasn't for me. And, like not every woman has to be a mother. Not every woman should be a mother. I mean, like, let's just be real about that. And so like I'm a wonderful auntie. I'm a wonderful godmom. I'm a wonderful,
Birth mom.
I'll take your kids out for the day and we'll eat ice cream for breakfast and we'll play or whatever. And then I'm bringing their butts home. Like I'm good at that. I will keep them safe. I'll keep them entertained. But doing that 24/7 just wasn't for me. When it happened, it was like the relationship I was in wasn't anything that was stable. My living situation wasn't stable. My mental situation wasn't stable. Like physically, I have days where I can barely take care of my own self. So like financially, I was in, the gutter. Like, so there was like no feasible way that having a baby was going to work. So like I went to Planned Parenthood and I was, going to go the other route until I walked in there and the lady was like, you're 24 weeks. And I was like, wait. I'm like, wait, what are you saying? How many? Like, she's like, yeah, you're like 6 months pregnant now. And so I sat in my car in the Planned Parenthood parking lot and cried for like 30 minutes straight. And then I started to drive to the Delaware Memorial Bridge because I was going to jump off. Like and that's like not like a joke or whatever. Like I tend to be a little silly at times, but I was going to jump to the bridge and just, I was done with it. And so like, as I'm like driving, Planned Parenthood gave me like, all this paperwork and stuff, and like tucked in there was this pamphlet for Adoptions from the Heart. And I said, well, either I'm going to go to the bridge or I'm going to call these people. And I called, and Amanda called me right back, and she was like, please come in ASAP, come in tomorrow. Come in, we'll talk, whatever. And I went in, in that first night, just the realization that like, this is real, like this is like, it was like a bomb had like blew up on my head. And I went and I met with Amanda, and when I walked in there, like I was a broken, defeated person. And like I just walked in there, and this is one thing like I always talk about, like when I do the classes or the podcast or whatever, I will be forever grateful for Amanda for she didn't judge me. Like I walked in there and I just like instantly felt like it was going to be okay. Like no matter what kind of conclusion we came to, like there's not going to be anybody jumping off the bridge today. We're going to figure this thing out. And like, you're not a bad person. no one's here to judge you. We're not trying to, we want to do what's best for you and your baby. And like, I never felt like pressured. I never felt judged. I felt I felt like I knew her my whole life. And I felt like she saw me and she could see that like I needed help. And so like we just like kind of went from there, because like I told my family and they were just like, nope, we're not going to support that at all. And they didn't speak to me. I told her dad, and he was like, I'm out, and he dipped. And so like I'm just kind of sitting there like, so at that point all I had was Amanda.
I actually couldn't afford a pregnancy test, so I went to an abortion clinic. And I did the same thing. I sat in the car. I told the girl, it's just so somber in there, and everybody just kind of keeps their head down and like is really quiet. Like even if you're like looking at a magazine or something, like it's just very like, don't make noise, and nobody like makes eye contact. You could just feel like everybody's in the room feels like this shame.
Yeah.
And so that's where I went, because the abortion clinic, I wanted to have an abortion, so I wanted information on that, and two, because this was my second child, and I was like, absolutely not will I do this again. I was like, you, Mary, just never wanted to have kids. Like I just was like, it's just not for me. And then the Lord was like, yes, it is, because I got pregnant.
Yeah.
Twice. And so, but I went into the clinic, and they just test you for free, because I couldn't afford a pregnancy test at the time. And then they call you up to like the window in front of everybody. And she was like, your test came back positive. And I literally just looked at her and I just started crying. And I just was like, I'm going to kill myself. Like, I don't want to do this. And I left and struggled with depression and everything. So was diagnosed with depression when I was in high school, from an attempted suicide, and just was like, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. But I just was like, I'm not. I'm not. Like I've tried before, and like this for sure wasn't for me. But I am just like, I don't know what to do. Like I just cried for 30 minutes and just sat there. And my son was 3 at the time, or he just turned 3 actually, like 30 days before. And so he's just in the back seat, and I just was like, who do I tell? What do I do? And so I called a friend, and then I told his birth father, I told who I thought was his birth father at the time. And I didn't have like a terrible living situation and everything. Like I was working full time, not having to pay any bills, and was living with my older brother, who now him and his wife live in Virginia. And so they moved to Dallas to help us. He's older than me. He's in his like later 30s. And so he was always told us like he's going to try to help us navigate life, because he wasn't set up that way and we weren't either. So he moved down to Texas to let us go to school and everything. And so we were living there with him and his wife, Brigida. And yeah, it was just, so I didn't have a terrible at-home situation at the time. But I didn't love being a mom at the time. Like I actually hated being a mom. And I was drinking, I was partying, I was smoking, I was taking pills, I wasn't like going to raves. I was just doing everything I could to not feel, or actually to feel anything. And so it wasn't a good season for me to just bring a child into the world. Like I was like failing my college classes and just using that as an excuse to not pay rent, and just partying and working at Twin Peaks is what we call it. I don't know if y'all have those there, but So yeah, it was just like a hard season, and finding out I was pregnant was just, I just felt shame. Like, are people going to think that I'm stupid for getting pregnant again? And people know that I'm not in a place to parent again. And like, it's just not fun, like there can just be a lot of shame because of like the world, like the pressures of the world. Like, you're not in this perfect place to have kids. And people just automatically judge every decision you do. Like, if you want to place your child for adoption, if you get pregnant, face an unplanned pregnancy, if you don't want to have kids, like there's judgment for everything. Yeah. And so there was just a lot of shame. So I hid my pregnancy for a while from my family as long as I could. At least I thought I was hiding it from my brother and his wife, but we've talked about it since, and she's like, I wasn't stupid. Like, I knew you weren't drinking anymore, and like, right. You weren't going out, but you were still like throwing up. So right. You weren't sick, you didn't have the flu for 3 months. So I'm like, yeah, true. I thought that I could hide it. I'm also only 94 pounds. And so like big shirts don't work. Like, you just see it in me. So it's clear after like a few weeks that I'm like gaining weight. So yeah, it was just really hard. But I think people do have a really bad stigma on like women facing unplanned pregnancies, so.
How do you think the world perceives birth parents, specifically birth mothers? How do you think the world currently like looks at birth mothers?
I think the way that Hollywood portrays them to be, which are like drug addicts, don't want our babies, don't care about the safety of them because we drop them off at firehouses in the middle of the cold weather or leave them in dumpsters. And so I think that's how Hollywood portrays us. And so if you're not a part of the adoption community, then you wouldn't really know like how actually killer freaking cool we are. So I think like we're pretty awesome. And I think how they should view it versus how they don't is like, I think there's a skewed view of foster care and all of those things. And so we have to like fight for the education to separate the two. And not that those biological families or those birth parents are any, like we're all coming from really broken situations and backgrounds. And so, but the situations are absolutely very different. And so birth parents are like, I mean, some of them really are kind of crazy, but that's like with any people group. Like, there's crazy white people, there's crazy Black people, there's crazy Asians, there's crazy women, there's crazy men, there's crazy everything. Like, we're all just crazy, like there's a crazy people group for anything you want to like put people in a box for. And so I think like they view us as like these like worthless, like can't believe you would do that, bad mothers. And it's like, hey, we are some of the strongest people emotionally, to have the emotional, even in like you were talking about, like the state of mind, like your mental wasn't in a good place, but because you love your child so much, regardless of mental state, addiction, desires, like anything, like homelessness, prostitution, like anything, or women just in college who just, this isn't for them. Like they literally are like, can acknowledge this is my situation. It's not going to work to provide me a good space to be a parent. I'm going to place my child for adoption. The amount of like emotional intelligence and self-awareness that it takes to do that, even if you don't realize that you're being self-aware in the moment, is really, and that's outside of like women who are coerced and all that. So I want to acknowledge that is a thing. Mm-hmm. But women who are not and have similar stories to me, Mary, then it's just like, it's so ridiculous how people, the amount of strength that it takes, like, and and selflessness, a really healthy balance of selflessness and selfishness. Because a lot of people say, oh, you're so brave and you're so selfish. And then like, there's like these really extreme spectrums of like, you're so brave and you're so awesome and you're so good. And there's this other side of like, you're a terrible human. Like, how could you ever give your baby away? And it's like, there's like this middle portion of like balanced between the both of like selfishness and self-awareness of like, I don't want to be a parent, admitting that out loud, or, I want to finish school and I won't be able to, or this is, if I bring a child into my current situation, my needs aren't going to be met anymore to some certain extent. And then also that selflessness of like, but also your needs won't be met. And this is going to cause us both a whole bunch of pain. But as a parent, I have to make the best decision for the both of us. So, and for me, I was factoring in my other child too. So like, if I bring another child into this home, what am I taking away from him? So right now you get, we get to go out to eat every week, and it's like once a week, or we get to go to the zoo for your birthday. But it's like, if I have to buy diapers and formula and I have to pay for daycare for two of you, you're not getting any of that. Like, we're actually going to barely scrape by at that point. So, you're not going to not only get that, not the extra, but you're also, your essentials won't actually always be met, most likely. And so I think that is just like, it takes a lot to like be able to process through that. And there are so many women who are like, absolutely not. Like, I'm okay with bringing my child into a bad situation. Mm-hmm. And like, that's a choice that they make, but it's like, there is this amount of selflessness and selfishness, I would say, that goes into making that decision. So
totally. What about you, Mary?
I think you made a very excellent point when you said like being self-aware. Like, a lot of people like to say it's like selfish, like, oh well, you just threw your baby away. Like that's what my brother says to me all the time. Oh, you just threw your baby away. And I'm like, I don't remember tossing her into a dumpster. Like, I didn't throw her away. I gave her an opportunity to have an amazing life. Like, it had, like, for you to even, for you to simplify it down to that ugliness is not fair.
Mm-hmm. It shows how small they are. Like, exactly. It shows your lack of self-awareness and ability to be self-aware.
Exactly. And it's like, it's like, but these will be the same people that, let's say that there is a girl who throws her baby in a dumpster because she doesn't want it, because she was forced into having this baby. They'll be the same people that'll be like, oh, well, she needs a death penalty and all, they'll be so outraged. But like women, and that's part of like where we are now, like as kind of like where we are as women, we don't get choices. Like, we have the illusion of choices, but in reality, the consequences that come with those choices is so unbalanced and is so unfair. You almost feel like you don't have any, because I made the choice I made, which was going to be best for me and my daughter, but I also sacrificed my relationships with people that I thought loved me. So is that really a choice? No, it isn't. Yep. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's the illusion of choice, but you really don't have one. And like you said, like the stereotype of someone who gives their baby away is, oh, well, she's a drug addict, or she's selfish. All she wants to do is party. She don't want the responsibility. Like, you have no idea, like, these people that say that have no idea the mental anguish and that you go through when you ultimately have to make the decision to say, I'm not what's best for my own child. Like, I'm not good for my own kid. That is a hole that can never be filled with nothing. There's nothing that can fill or repair that hole. And it only gets worse when you have people that say things like that. oh, well, you took the easy way out. Let me tell you, there was nothing. This is something, this is a pain that we will feel every single day for the rest of our lives. There's nothing easy about that.
Yeah.
And I think you made just a great point about the way, for all these years, the stereotype of what a birth mom is. A birth mom is a junkie, a birth mom is a hoe, a birth mom is all these irresponsible things. And like, that's the reason why, like, anytime Amanda asks me to like speak and share my story, or like, I want to do that because I want to put like a new face to us as women. I want to show, like, you have no idea what war, like, we are warriors. We get up every single day and have to face that choice. And that's not for the weak. That you and that's why I'm always so willing to just speak, because part of it is just flat out ignorance, and people don't take the time to get educated. They just speak on it, and that's like a new thing now, like speaking and you have no idea what you're even talking about.
Yeah.
And so, you know what I mean? So like, that's why I just want to, like, my mom was adopted, and this was back like in the 50s, and she had a terrible experience with her adoption, like, and she never got over it, and it affected her whole life. Like, she always felt like she was thrown away, because like back in those days it was basically like, here's a basket with a baby in it and we're out. And so like, it affected her whole life, and she was like an alcoholic, and she had a very, very sad life, and she died in a very tragic way, and she never got over it. And so when I told her what I was doing, like, she took that like, what happened to me, how could you do that? And I'm like, Mom, you're not listening. Let me try to educate you. Let me try to show you that it won't be that way. And she was just so closed off from it. She was killed in a fire 3 days before Christmas, and we never reconciled on that. And so, like I said, any chance I get to just be a cheerleader and be an educator about how beautiful this process is, I'm always willing to do that, because we are portrayed in such an ugly, ugly way, and it's not fair.
Yeah. And it's like, I think that also the past of like the history around adoption, like Hollywood feeds into what the history around it was. And that's just from like evil people just like doing it because they don't want to get educated. They're fearful of vulnerability and honesty. And so it's just like hide was so much of the generations past. And so it's like you see so much of that being opened up now because of, and that's what, like, exactly your mom, like adoptees, like, regardless of like how open it is, they're just going to have so much trauma, and there's just trauma there, period. And so that is different for every adoptee, and what that looks like and how that plays out. But it's just like, we don't know what happened. We don't know her birth mom's story. And so it's just sad that there was a birth mom out there who, maybe, do you know her birth mom?
I mean, we found out some things, like we found out some things about her birth mom. Like, my mom found out that she had like 8 other siblings, like that her birth mom was kind of like, the town kind of, drunk, the town kind of, she was like, I don't know, back in those days, like, she was just not really, she wasn't interested in being a mom and things like that. But like, my mom found out that she had like 8 other siblings. And what was crazy was like, they all kind of live like within like a 5-mile radius.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so it was like really messy. And, like I said, she never she never got over it. And I always had a hard time understanding why, because my Nani and Papa, her adoptive parents were like angels. They were like the best people ever. And I'm like, Mom, you had such a good life though. Like what? And it took me a long time to understand that, like, it doesn't matter how good of a life she had, she still had that feeling that she was thrown away.
Yeah, abandonment for sure.
And it never I feel so bad that she's not here now, that I can't tell her, like, Mom, I get it now and I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Like, she struggled with that her whole life. And my biggest thing was, but look at how much better your life was. Well,
Totally.
that doesn't change.
Yeah.
That doesn't change that she was abandoned. She was thrown away. That was her, that's her truth. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
So hard. It's so hard too, because it's like, that is going to be the truth for some of them, and some of them it's not. And it's just so like messed up because of like sin. And it's just so sad that there's just, and I always look at adoptees as a part of the triad, as like, even as adults, like they're the children in the situation. And so it's just like my son Easton, like there's choices and decisions that I make. Sometimes they're good for him and sometimes they're not so good, but I have to make a decision. And some of those decisions, even when they're the best decision for him, even though they still suck for him in some ways, he'll never understand. Right. He'll never understand why I made those decisions, like placing his brother for adoption, he'll never understand. And it's like, the hope is like one day that he becomes a parent and he can, somewhat understand that. And I just always look at the adoptees as the children, and they are the children in the triad, but even as adults, that it's just like, there are decisions for so long that I just like never understood for my mom. Like, I never understood how she couldn't get over her alcoholism. Like, I was like, I could do it. Like, I gave up drugs and alcohol for, like, I don't understand, and it's just like, being older and having children and even overcoming those things, it's like, I get it, Mom. Like, I'm so sorry, and so for adoptees, I just think it's so hard, this is what happened to them. They're like the only ones in the triad who just didn't have a choice. Like, they don't get to choose to be in the triad or not to be in the triad. And it's just so hard for them. And everybody, it's so invalidating when people are like, for them, I'm sure it's so invalidating when people are like, but they had money. Yeah. But you went to a good school and you like had food, and they're like, but I longed for my mother, like I've heard adoptees say, like, I'd rather be with my mom, who is like a drug addict, than have like a big house and like have all of the nice things. Like, I'd give it all away to just be with my birth mom. Right. And so it's just wild, because you're like, let me tell you what you don't want to do. But it's like, no, like we can't fathom what that's like to feel that abandonment and those identity issues, and no amount of love. It's just like, it's just not meant to be, like no part of adoption is like meant to be. Like, we should never have to have experienced this much brokenness to the point of other people who are not biologically their parents, like raising children like that. Just, it's weird and chaotic and sad and tragic in so many ways, because it's just not supposed to happen. But it's so redemptive and so good because God's good. Yeah. So.
Well, and everybody has their own truth. Like, we have to let everybody have their own feelings. And what I'm getting from both of you is this idea of not casting judgment on other people, because you may feel some type of way, but somebody else may be in the same shoes as you and feel a different type of way. And that's okay. We don't have to have preconceived notions of how you're supposed to feel based off of every decision,
Yeah, that's good.
As we're kind of wrapping up here, November is National Adoption Month, as everyone probably knows. I'm curious if you could leave us with a final note of what you would want the world to know about adoption that you think people still are not aware of, whether it's your experience as a birth parent, the idea of open adoption, anything you want, just something that you would want people to know.
That's good.
I mean, I think I kind of just say it all the time, but like, I want people to know that, like, we haven't thrown our children away. Like, we haven't thrown them away. We don't not love them. This wasn't easy. And it took me a long time when people say, you know, when there are the positive people that say, you know, Mary, we're so proud of you. You've given this couple such a great gift. It took me a long time to like reconcile that because like I felt so terrible about myself that it took me a long time to be able to embrace just how beautiful and like pure this love and relationship is. And like, it is a gift. It was a gift for them and it was a gift for me. And so like, I just want people to know that like, there's nothing easy about this. And we think about our children every minute of every day. And I still, like, 3 years later, am like, I have my moments where I'm like, maybe I could have done it, you know, like maybe if I would have just whatever, you know, and I don't, and that's not me regretting my decision. That's just me kind of beating up on myself in those like weaker moments, because it is a constant everyday grieving process. It's a grieving process that goes on every day and it will never end. And I just want people to know that like birth moms are awesome people. We're smart people. We are loving people, and we matter. Like, we matter too. And like, it's okay to like ask us things. Like, if you don't know, if you're unsure of like something about how the process works, I would much rather you like ask me a question than just like make assumptions about what this is. So like, that's kind of just all I would say is like, we didn't throw our kids away, and this was by no means easy at all.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good, Mary. It's like grief isn't linear, you know? It just
Right.
changes. It doesn't ask permission when it comes or when it goes, and it just continues, you know?
It's like, and it's always like there, you know what I mean? Like, grief it's always kind of just out there floating in the atmosphere, and you never know like when it's going to crash into you.
Mm-hmm. It's always, there's this like good example that Ashley Mitchell, who's a birth mom, like uses, but it's that like our grief is like the same size. And right after placement, it's like we're just as big as our grief. And so it consumes us. And like, as we grow and like form and other things happen in our lives and other, we gain other like grief circles and things, and just like we grow and we get bigger around our grief. And so, but our grief doesn't ever go away. It doesn't ever get smaller. It just it can come up less often, and it no longer consumes everything, our whole entire world. But it definitely doesn't ask permission when it decides to hit. But I think like I would want people to just know that even if you're not a part of the adoption community, that education is valuable, important for the kids that are involved. Like when you're asking questions to adoptive families in the grocery store, and how and when it's appropriate to do that. and that everybody's, exactly what Amanda said, that everybody's story is so different. And so just blanket statements, like, they're just non-existent. Like, they shouldn't exist. That to say that all adoptees are one way, or all birth moms are one way, or all adoptive families are one way, it's just not true, because we are just all coming from different backgrounds and seasons and traumas and things that brought us to these relationships. But there's no one size fits all blanket statement that we can slap on adoption. And that just leads into the fact that that I want people to understand this about all things in the world, including race, adoption, everything. But that grief and sadness and brokenness and trauma coexist with joy and happiness and redemption. And that we don't have to choose one or the other, that we can live in the midst of both. And by sharing one more often or less than the other doesn't completely it doesn't completely delete the fact that the other side doesn't exist. And so even in adoption is hard and it sucks, but just because I share a really great photo of like the redemption in our story and just how awesome this week has been, or this day has been with my birth son, doesn't mean that I'm saying that it doesn't mean that I'm celebrating the loss or the trauma that he'll experience. I'm just celebrating what today is. Like, I'm just celebrating that even in the trauma that he will experience and that he has experienced, and the sadness that I've gone through and the loss that our family has had to endure, and the brokenness, that there's I can still celebrate the good things in that. So I think we get really lost and mixed in the middle when we try to take one side or the other. Because there's trauma, adoption cannot be a good thing. And it's that's just not true.
Right. Totally. Simply amazing, ladies. I've been doing this over 8 years, and people ask me all the time, what are birth mothers like? Tell me what you do every day. And so many years later, I am still just so inspired, because it's really hard to be a woman. It's hard to navigate life today. There's so many challenges in so many ways, and so many layers to trying to figure out who we are as women, and trying to compete with all the expectations and the pressures that are put on us. And hearing the both of you kind of come full circle with your experience of placing a child for adoption just shows the dedication and the resilience that you have. And it's really great to listen to. And my hope is that people can hear your stories, not just the good, but the bad as well, because this is not all sunshine and rainbows. And while there's really amazing pieces to adoption, there's also a lot of loss and a lot of sadness that continues on. But I am proud to know both of you, and I'm just truly, truly so grateful that you're both open to sharing your story. The idea behind connecting the two of you is that you both come from maybe different geographic locations and maybe different backgrounds, but you have so much in common. And the fact that you were strong enough to not only place your child for adoption, but to continue to fight through the grief that you experience on an everyday basis is phenomenal. So thank you both. We're happy and excited that people get to hear your stories, and continue to advocate for adoption, for your story, who you are. And we're happy to know you. So thank you.
Thank you.